The marketplace for weightlifting shoes honestly doesn't really change a whole lot or all that often. You've got Nike, Adidas, and Reebok who are all pretty much dominating the main stage right now, and they've all got their respective flagship shoes that are competition ready and are all really good. But when a new weightlifting shoe brand comes out, you kind of take notice and you get a little bit excited, especially when that weightlifting shoe looks a little something like this. These are the Velaasa Strake weightlifting shoes. If you haven't heard of the brand, that's okay. They were a small brand that kickstarted these shoes. The background of the owner is actually in track and field, but like with any competitive sport, a good amount of strength and conditioning goes into the development aspects towards that sport, and for that, you need an able pair of shoes. A lot of the research and development that went into the Velaasa Strakes was actually done by Olympic athletes, so you can rest assured that these are competition-ready weightlifting shoes. As I mentioned earlier, these shoes were actually funded on Kickstarter, but unlike a lot of things that are on that crowdfunding platform, these lived to see the light of day. They came out on time, and the build quality and construction is actually pretty dang good. So the whole upper of the shoe is a couple different fabrics. You have a synthetic fabric in the middle part of the shoe that becomes a little bit more reinforced at the toe area. Of course, you have the big Velaasa logo, and that is going to be a little bit polarizing. Some people have said they hate it. I am indifferent because I actually kind of like the look of the logo itself. And you have a bit of fabric mesh at the ankle collar, and then you have a really thick TPU heel counter that acts like a cup around your heel, and then it extends all the way into the middle part of the shoe, which gives you a little bit more lateral support. There is only a single medial strap, of course Velcro. The ring on it is plastic, which I do not really care for. I actually don't really care for the strap at all in general because it just feels a little bit flimsy for a shoe that costs $250, but more on that later. The laces on this shoe are the round type. Actually work pretty well. I haven't had any issues with them becoming untied, but then again, usually I just stuff them right under the medial strap, so there's really no way that they can become untied. There is the lace loops in the inner part of the shoe, and they kind of have like a fly wire design behind them. They lace a little bit further down, and it provides a pretty locked down fit. These little lines right here are like little ropes right here. They don't really do anything. They're actually kind of just sewed off right there. I thought they were part of the actual just lacing system, and like it would be like Nike's fly wire, but they don't actually do anything. The entirety of the shoe itself is not that breathable because of the synthetic fabric, and all you're getting in the way of ventilation are these tiny little holes on the side. So one thing that can be improved with maybe a later version or iteration, maybe even a hot fix, is to just improve the overall breathability of the shoe. So the toe box here is reinforced with another layer of synthetic fabric, and for whatever reason that's probably there for like durability, or maybe even there for a little bit of protection so you don't, jam your toes when you drop a plate on your foot. But what happens there is that it creates this crease, and that in turn pushes against your foot. That's probably the worst part of this shoe. And then another thing about the toe box in general is that it's a little bit on the flat side. So if you have big toes or like a big forefoot, it might feel a little bit cramped in the Velaasa Strakes. The heel of the shoe is, of course, wood. On my black shoes, I have a mahogany stain, and then I have a little logo that is engraved in there. It says Khmer, and that's because I'm Cambodian. And then on my white ones, I have just the plain wood. It's unfinished, and it gives a good look to the white shoes. I couldn't imagine getting something darker on the white pair of shoes, but the black pair of shoes really, in my opinion, looks better and looks sick with the red mahogany. And from a look standpoint, just in general, I think that these are some of the best weightlifting shoes. They look sick. There's like minimalist lines to it. There's not a whole lot going on, but I think in turn that makes them look modern, and then there's a little bit of the old school look with the wooden heel. The outsole of the shoe is flat. It's got some flexible grooves in the front. It's got the logo Velaasa right there. And it actually does a really good job with gripping. These are some of the better gripping weightlifting shoes that I've used in quite some time. And I appreciate that because I do the majority of my lifting on dusty rubber flooring, which could be a huge problem for pretty much any shoe. So going back to the heel, the effective heel height is 0.86 inches or 22 millimeters, the same exact height as the Legacy lifters. But what I do prefer about the Velaasa Strakes is that the heel to toe drop is more gradual. There's not so much of an arch in the mid part of the shoe, and that for me works out a lot better because I'm able to balance much better in something with a more of a gradual heel to toe drop. The weight of these shoes is pretty much the same as the Legacy lifters at 20.13 ounces. I think fit is going to be probably the weirdest part of the Velaasa Strakes because you really don't have any shoe to compare them to. So for me, these shoes fit me pretty much right on the money. I would not say that these are a wide weightlifting shoe like the Legacy lifters, which I'm going to say are probably the widest at the moment. They probably fit most similar to the Adidas Addy Powers. So a little bit more narrow in the toe box. The actual midfoot of the shoe is actually not that narrow, but the toe box can be a little bit flat and a little bit narrow, and these shoes do require quite a bit of break-in because of that synthetic material. The toe box flexes just fine, but that synthetic material needs to just loosen up a little bit in that area. When it comes to sizing these, that's probably going to be another weird one because, yeah, you don't have anything to compare them to. I got these in a size 10, which is my normal training shoe size. That's the size that I just order when I just have no clue what to get. And my normal weightlifting shoe size is a 9.5. A size 10 in these fits me snug. Requires a little bit of break-in. I almost thought that they were too small initially, and I could probably go for a size 10.5. But because they're weightlifting shoes, I don't mind that they're a little bit more snug. If you have a wider foot, think about going a full size up from your training shoe size. Training shoe size, not your weightlifting shoe size. From your weightlifting shoe size, you're definitely going to need to go at least a half size up. For reference, my Romaleos, my Addy Powers, my Legacy lifters are all 9.5. I got these in a size 10, and they fit me on the snug side. You do for sure need to size up if you're coming from any of those popular weightlifting shoes. So for flexibility, I honestly don't really judge weightlifting shoes all that critically because they're all not that flexible, and that's done for a reason. There's supposed to be a little bit more stability in weightlifting shoes. When you add flexibility, you always lose out on stability. And in this case, the flexibility of the synthetic upper is not too bad. Like I said, you do need to break in the shoe a little bit, but the forefoot flexes pretty well. The outsole flexes well with your foot. Obviously, nothing in the middle to the heel of the shoe is going to be flexible at all. But the one problem about these shoes is that flex point that I went over in the build quality, and that can be a little bit annoying, distracting. It does not detract from your lifts. I personally have not lost a lift because of that crease pressing up into my foot, but it's worth noting that it's there. It's going to be a little bit annoying. Otherwise, the shoe in itself is fairly flexible and decently comfortable. Like I said earlier, the shoe doesn't breathe all that great, but no weightlifting shoe really does in the first place. So that's another thing you can't really fault these shoes for. But I would like to see a little bit enhanced breathability for maybe the next iteration. I would say get rid of these little decorative wires and then just open this area up so that your foot can breathe a little bit better. But overall, pretty much on par with all of the other weightlifting shoes out there, like the Legacy lifters, Romaleos, or not the Addy Powers. Those are pretty dang flexible shoes. Stability in the Velaasa Strakes is top shelf, and that's for a few different reasons. Obviously, you have your wooden heel, which is the way that they were making weightlifting shoes for decades, and that's for good reason. It just works. It's not going to compress on you, and it makes a hell of a sound when you stomp down on a platform. The heel counter of this shoe is excellent. It does a really good job in keeping your heel both locked down and from rolling laterally because of the extension into the middle part of the shoe. These are one of the more laterally stable shoes. There's a bit of a flare that comes out at the forefoot of the shoe, and that gives you a little bit more contact area with the ground when you're jumping or when you're landing. The actual outsole of the shoe is flat. There's no curvature to it at all, and for me, that's a huge bonus. I know a lot of weightlifting shoes kind of have a little bit more of a angle towards the toe so that you can get a little bit more of a jump out of it, but I like the more balanced, flat outsole. These shoes, for me, resemble my favorite weightlifting shoes, one that I don't talk about a ton because they're kind of hard to get your hands on, and that's the ASICS 727. I really haven't found another shoe that resembles that shoe quite like the Velaasa Strakes, and that is mainly because of the heel to toe drop. The heel height on these shoes is a little bit higher, but the heel to toe drop feels very, very similar in that it's very gradual, and that leads to a much more balanced feeling shoe for me personally. When I'm using weightlifting shoes that have more of an arch, I tend to rock back off of my toes a little bit more, and that's not an issue that I've had with my Velaasa Strakes. So when it comes to performance of these shoes versus some of the bigger brands, like why would you spend the money on these versus the tried and true Nikes, Adidases, and Reeboks out there? And honestly, I can't tell you that these are any better than those shoes because those are all excellent weightlifting shoes, but they're definitely not worse than any of those either. Flexibility of these shoes is pretty much on par. They're weightlifting shoes. You don't really need them to be a ton flexible. As long as they flex in the forefoot of the shoe, you should be fine. I want to say that they're probably the most similar to like Romaleo 2s and the Legacy lifters. Addy Powers and Lice Tongues are going to be a little bit more flexible. Romaleo 3s are going to be more flexible than these shoes as well. For stability, I'm going to put these on the level as the Nike Romaleos 2s, Legacy lifters, Lice Tongue 2s, probably a little bit more stable than Addy Powers and Romaleo 3s. The weight of these shoes will make them feel a little bit more stable overall, so they're going to be on the heavier part of the spectrum. Obviously, they're not going to be as light as like Romaleo 3s or Addy Powers, but they feel very similar to Romaleo 2s, Lice Tongue 2s, and then the most similar to Legacy lifters because they weigh pretty much the same thing there. So Velaasa is a small company, and these shoes had to be kickstarted. There's not a whole lot of money to be spared or left on the table. There's a lot of money that actually went into the R&D of the shoe. The actual build quality materials on the shoe are top notch, so obviously they're going to cost a little bit more. The production is probably not on the same scale as Nike or Reebok, so these shoes do cost a little bit more. By themselves, they cost $250, and then if you wanted to add on the custom stain and engraving, it's another $60, making these shoes $310. Honestly, I do think that the value of the shoe is worth it. I don't think that they are overpriced compared to some of the other ones that are mass produced. Obviously, they're going to be a little bit more expensive, but Velaasa is a small company, and you kind of have to know that the costs are going to be a little bit greater for them. For $250, this is an excellent weightlifting shoe. Like I said, it is one of the most balanced for me, and I think a lot of you guys out there will like it as well. Obviously, it's going to set you apart from the crowd if you walk into the gym with a pair of shoes that look like this. People are going to ask you where you got them, and you can tell them that you went and you're supporting a small American company in achieving their dreams and helping feed their families, and that alone is probably worth the extra $50 that you're going to be spending with the Velaasa Strakes over, say, the Romaleos, Legacy lifters, or Adidas Lice Tongues. I highly recommend these shoes because I really like weightlifting in them, and they have a really good story behind them. So if you guys have any questions about the Velaasa Strakes, feel free to leave them in the comments section. And as always guys, please hit that like button, subscribe, and thanks for watching.